everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. And I'm reusing the old tagline specifically on purpose this time round.
Right.
We'll see what happens. Next time, who fucking knows? But yeah, this one's actually relevant to me in my free play fortnightly this time round. So yeah, there it is. It's also a hell of a lot easier to say something you've said about 90 times before on a podcast than it is to try and change it. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it is free play fortnightly this week. It'll be our last one of the year. So this is kind of your last chance, Rich, to get a game in 2024 on the podcast.
Yep.
Because next week or the week after, whenever it is in our lives, we'll be talking about all the games we played this year in 2024. Very much a full experience rather than... So in 2023, when we started the podcast, we didn't start till March. So, we had, I guess, 12 weeks less of the year. Yeah. Whereas, this time round, try and squeeze in all those games and talk about them all and give them all their due diligence and stuff that is in. It'll be interesting to see us do that. So, enjoy this relaxing week prior to it. This chilling out session. So, I think we'll just do what we always do. Rochambeau, get straight into the games.
All right.
And then we'll see how we get on. So let's do this.
All right.
Remember, I've got the
Three
giggles.
and then go.
3 then go. 1, 2, 3, go.
Scissors again.
1, 2, 3, go. Rocks. 1, 2, 3, go. You covered my rock.
There we go.
I like to stay. That is always the best thing. Like, I love that. A lot, like the amount of times that Spotify is always like, "Oh, you should do a video podcast and stuff," and I'm like, "What? Watch us fucking do rock paper scissors really awkwardly." Like, I mean, it's definitely not got its own OnlyFans page. That someone rock paper scissors. Anyway, so yeah, after you, sir.
Cool. All right. I came in here ready to talk about something, and then you said it was
glad.
Then you said it was the last one of the year and we'd be covering a load of other stuff. And I kind of don't want it to get lost in the shuffle of the sort of the end of the year hubbub. So I'm chucking the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remaster under the bus this week.
Oh, okay.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Can you explain to me where that sits? Because
in general,
I don't want to say famously because it's not famous at all, but famously to myself, I've never played a Call of Duty campaign. I have owned several Call of Duty games and played multiplayer constantly, but I've never played an actual campaign. So which console is this for?
So this would have originally been on the Xbox 360 era. I think it was 2009 that the game came out originally. The remaster is... I played it on the PS4. It was a damn sight more recent. It's like 2022 or something like that.
This is very vague. Is this the greeny kind of box? Is that correct? Or because
so that was if the greeny kind of box is the one I'm thinking of, that'll be Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right. Fair enough.
Because Call of Duty's combinations of names and arcs have just got ridiculous.
Yeah. So Modern Warfare 2
was the kind of yellowy one with green hints.
Cool. So that I played a load of the Spec Ops.
Yep. And the multiplayer.
Exactly. Yeah. But I've never played on the campaign. Right. Yeah.
So
that got stuck on my PS3. My first PS3. So I've had 2 PS3s break on me. My first PS3 it overheated with this game, but I've never played the game. So I put it in the freezer to try and cool it down. Did I tell you about that?
No, you didn't. That sounds like a stupid idea.
Yeah, well, when you're a student and you really desperately want something to not cost you lots of money, and you love your PS3 and you use it for everything, you try everything, and wrapping it in a tea towel and putting it in the freezer was one of the things that I read that might possibly help kick the red light of death or whatever it was the PS3 equivalent was. It did not.
No, that does sound like bollocks.
Yes, it is. So I've had that game and L.A. Noire stuck in PS3s before. So there we go.
Oh, well, there you go. That is exciting.
You didn't sound too genuine about that, but that's okay.
That's because I wasn't.
Yeah, fine.
So, Modern Warfare 2 is a game that I also spent an absolute shit ton of time playing the multiplayer on. There would be many an hour that myself, my friend Andrew and his sister Amy would sit in their living room, and it was big enough that we could have an Xbox 360 each and a TV each, and we could play online, and we would play like until about 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning. And I think we totted it up in like that and Battlefield Bad Company 2. We probably spent about a week on of my life. That is a week I'm never getting back.
Yeah. It is amazing when you kind of tot that up into
I try not to think about it anymore now because it's sickening. But cherished memories of hunkering down behind a riot shield and just going and ruining other people's evenings.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So there was a remaster of the first Modern Warfare game that came out on the PS4. I quite liked it. It was kind of lukewarm received in some quarters. I think some people were broadly fine with it.
Isn't that... Oh, sorry. It's just I got questions. Is all
greeny cover.
Greeny cover. Yeah, isn't that the one that most people regard as the best campaign from Call of Duty games? Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's my personal favourite one. It's my personal favourite. Like of the I know I've said about Black Ops before being one that keeps coming back to me, but I think Call of Duty, like Modern Warfare, is my favourite Call of Duty game. It's just that I seem to end up playing Black Ops more. I don't know what that tells you. I'm probably going to find out that I like Black Ops more now I've said that out loud. It feels really weird to say it. But I do have a soft spot for Modern Warfare because like that came out when I was at uni, and again, we played a lot of that, so it's definitely got a special place.
Okay.
The remaster came out, and again, like I spent quite a lot of time with it. Crucially, you could play the multiplayer and you could play offline with bots and all that kind of stuff, which nowadays I quite like doing. I'd rather do that than play online, frankly. And then fast forward a little bit, and you have the Modern Warfare 2 remaster that has no Spec Ops mode and no multiplayer.
Oh,
at all!
Wow, that's ridiculous.
It is just the campaign.
I would never have played this game at all then now.
No, you wouldn't have.
Because
you would have completely missed out. And it's an odd duck in that respect. I do wonder if, and I should have looked, I didn't because I wasn't going to talk about this today, but I do wonder how much of an impact like the pandemic might have had on any of that kind of, can we realistically put together the rest of the multiplayer stuff or not, and blah, blah, blah. So it'd be interesting to find out. But, you know, it is what it is. You just got the campaign. And some people put the campaign as the best one. Yeah. The Call of Duty.
Oh, okay.
In the Call of Duty saga.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. It's good. I mean, it's not a bad campaign by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely one of the better ones. But when it's the entirety of the game you are playing, some of the kind of faults do kind of show up quite stark. Okay. You know? So this is still the era where you would occasionally have like infinitely respawning enemies coming at you until you get to a certain point and then they would stop. Yeah. So you just have to kind of push past them and stuff like that. And, you know, it's fine, but it feels a little bit like, to go back to it now, it feels a little bit... dated feels like a harsh word. It feels like too harsh a word. But at the same time, this is the entirety of the game. There is nothing else to it. So if that is the one thing you are doing, and you've got this kind of like high concept story that is kind of like Michael Bay does war film, and also we wish we were kind of like 24 nearly, and also Red Dawn. Yeah. And it's covering a lot of bases, basically. And, you know, there are some fun character returns, and there are some inevitable betrayals, and there's that No Russian mission that caused all that controversy.
See, I'm aware of that, but I don't know. But again, I don't know anything of it really. I just know there was like,
it caused an uproar. Because, you know, you could go through this airport and, you know, shoot a load of civilians. Crucially, a lot of the arguments at the time ignored the fact that you don't ever actually have to do any shooting yourself. You can just walk slowly at the back and stuff like that. But when you are far away from that moment where they release it and it's courting the controversy, and it's like, oh, why? Like, you know, that's kind of cool. And you are that much older and wiser. Yeah. And you go back and you play it, and you're just like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's as a whole, the story was more of like a kind of appetizer for the multiplayer. When it's the main course, it just doesn't hit in the same way.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't outstay its welcome, mainly because it can't. It's very short, and it's got some interesting set pieces, and it still plays like Call of Duty on a fundamental level. You know, it's snappy, it's responsive, and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, all that stuff about, like with the multiplayer, half the fun would be customizing loadouts and stuff like that. Like, none of that's there. It's all of that's
strange,
jettisoned,
isn't it?
all of it. And you get there's like this little museum bit you can go around at the end, and you can start gunfights in that, if you like, with selections of enemies. That's kind of it.
Shoot civilians in a museum or something like that instead.
Well, it's not even like a proper level. So it's not like you can treat it like an impromptu bot deathmatch or anything like that. It's just a couple of big open rooms.
Yeah. And
you just get like plastered against a wall. It's not like at the end of the Modern Warfare 1 campaign, you had this like little timed plane hijacking that you had to try and like shoot your way through in a couple of minutes and stuff like that. And it was this fun kind of like time trial mode thing. You don't have that. You've got the tutorial kind of kill house intro that you can treat like that, but that's it. You can unlock some cheats, and I'm genuinely struggling to
say any more about it.
And I mean, it's good for like a kind of mindless few hours, you know, but I think when it first came out, they were selling it for like 20 quid or something like that. And I'm just not sure
it sounds like DLC almost. Especially with how short the campaign is.
Because
I believe it's like 4 or 5 hours.
It'll be something like that. Like when I originally got it, it was when I was unemployed shortly after university. So I played through it like 2 sittings, and they weren't particularly long sittings. But this was definitely that. I mean, Call of Duty is still very multiplayer focused, but I am one of those weirdos that does play the campaign anyway, or play it first. I played much more of the campaigns than I ever have the multiplayer with the exception of Modern Warfare 2, really. And this just falls flat for me. It's just not doing it for me anymore. It looks good.
Yeah,
the graphical bit of the remaster
I expect a remaster
fine.
to be doing, and Call of Duty, for anything that anyone ever thinks of anything about Call of Duty, the day of Call of Duty doesn't look great, generally. No. I mean, what's the most recent Call of Duty you've played then? Because it's strange that that is in so
most recent Cold War.
Okay. Which is what?
It's a couple of years back, maybe?
Years back, right, okay, fair. Because I genuinely have been tempted to play the new Black Ops 1, mostly to try and take 6. Mostly to try and take advantage of having Game Pass, but I still haven't brought myself to the table for it. Like, I don't know what it... I have no idea why I have a block in my mind. And it's not even like... because I've as I've just stated about 6 or 7 times, I've played the multiplayers, in them before, and I've got no problem with playing Call of Duties and stuff. And the short campaigns, they're over quite quickly, which again speaks to me as a gamer. I don't know. I'm just not that fussed. And I don't know what it is that makes that the case. The modern warfare thing, and I guess it's just my historical sort of not obsession. It's not obsession at all, but it's almost like severe interest in World War II. That maybe is what makes me kind of think, well, actually, I'm more interested in playing those. And I'm almost the inverse of what you kind of read in articles all the time. It's like, gamers are sick of playing World War II first-person shooters and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm still here. So when you kind of, I'm probably more likely, if I was going to play anything, it would be World at War. I think I'm saying that out loud. Like, I think that's true. That is a old World War II shooter of the Call of Duty type. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably like a World at War.
Yeah, that's what I mean. World at War
is like a 2007, 8.
Yeah.
Kind of era one. We played it at uni, so yeah.
And I've heard that's quite good. So it's just I don't know. I genuinely will play a single player mode of Call of Duty at some point, and it might be one of these ones, maybe that isn't, because it's ones I've kind of dabbled with the Spec Ops and stuff. I probably just need to choose which one. I feel like it's a grand sort of like, I need to pick my time when I lose my virginity sort of thing, kind of thing with Call of Duty. Like, as in, it needs to take me out for a nice steak and buy me some nice flowers before I'm going to do it with COD.
So that aside,
you want me to score that, right?
Well, yeah, I think as a closing remark, it's just that kind of, the irony is not lost on me that this is easily the one that I played the most of. And it is the one that I played the most multiplayer of.
Yeah.
And there it is coming out again with just the campaign.
Even though, so, because I can ask you this, would you like me to kind of score Modern Warfare 2 into it, like the old game as well? But because you only really talked about the remaster and what you got.
No,
with
we
that.
are just doing the remaster.
Right, okay then.
Yep, just the remaster.
Like 3?
Yeah, it works.
3, I think, probably from the amount of return. For £20, you want a hell of a lot more. And no matter how nice it looks and how it might handle, it sounds like comparative. If you take what I understand to be a great game, or at least a very good game from previously, strip things away from it to make it worse, that is a cardinal sin for me. And you lose more marks for me on my watch for doing that.
It almost would have made more sense, considering how beloved the multiplayer was. It almost would have made more sense for them to just bring the multiplayer out and not the single player bit.
Or maybe wait. Kind of like, could they have bundled that with the? I mean, they probably didn't think about it doing it anyway. They probably saw how well the Modern Warfare 1 remaster sold. Maybe
I wonder if it was the other way around, because they did bundle that with Infinite Warfare originally, and then they bought it out separately.
Right,
so I wonder if they, saw the backlash and was like, oh, all right, fine.
Right. I'm nodding because I'm like, Infinite War. I'm just like, all these war words. I'm like, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
This
Modern,
is it.
Infinite.
This is what happens when you do the Call of Duties.
I don't understand how they have the time or energy, anybody, to just pump out a game every year.
I don't think they do anymore. It's I forgot campaign off the campaign flipping name thing on the spreadsheet.
Watching a man.
That's such a long name to type in, isn't it?
I know.
Ridiculous.
You're gonna have to tell me what to title this podcast, because I'm not writing out all that kind of like COD more 2.
Funnily enough, it's not as long as the game that I was originally going to talk about, that I did not want to get lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
So,
are you just going to launch your next free play fortnightly, like at the start of the year, after we do? This is us advertising Drive January, where we're going to be just playing driving games for a whole month.
Oh yeah, so it'll be after that.
Yeah. Okay, cool, fair enough. So I am going to spin it back a little bit further, time-wise, and I'm going to do that thing that... so I've kind of brought a bit of a smorgasbord, a bit of a cheese board's worth of sort of gaming to you today. I'm going to present it to you. Right. So I've read a couple of books.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. I know. Yeah, it happens sometimes. Although I find time extremely difficult to read at the moment. Like, it's in kind of like, playing video games and sort of, different things like life and actually looking at your children for a little bit. And I've also kind of played a game as well. I was going to bring, and I am going to lose this in the hubbub, and I am going to lose weirdly, I'm going to lose this in the shuffle. I've played all the way pretty much to the end of Hades on the Switch.
Oh yeah.
And for a long time I was like, I'm going to play this, I'm going to review it for the podcast. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to keep that for me. It was a me experience. You don't need to know how I feel about Hades. I just played a lot of Hades. And you know what? It's really fucking good. But I actually started writing some notes on it. I was like, I'm not going to review it. I kind of got a little bit of way through. I was like, do you know what? Just really enjoyed that game. I don't think people need to know how I feel about Hades. There you are. So, Anyway, and then I started thinking, right, okay, I've got a couple of books here about gaming that I've been meaning to read for a while. And something that serendipitous happened.
Right.
So I started reading... and read through quite quickly. So, Retro Gaming, a bite-sized history of video games by Mike Diver. So he published it in 2019, and it cost about £5 or £6 on Amazon. Now, I read it, And literally within like a couple of days, a podcast called Game Older Podcast. So, and I will tag you guys on Instagram. Say nothing about this. But, so they released a brilliant podcast dedicated to Mike, with Mike on there, with a full interview about his wide and varied career. Now, it was mostly, I would say, about... because he's released 5 books now on video gaming, and 2 have been released this year. So it was mostly about his most recent books. But I implore you to step away from our podcast after this, obviously, and go and listen to, if you are interested, the Game Older podcast and this interview with Mike Diver. Really, really good. So, and I'll sort of talk a little bit about this specific book that I read. I can highly recommend that interview, and I can highly recommend this book to anybody as well. Now, the reason it worked so well for me is because I wouldn't say it's necessarily a beginner's guide or an introduction to retro gaming, but it's very easy to get through quite quickly. I'd say it probably took me about 4 hours to read the whole book, and he describes it as like almost like a bite-sized like toilet book. I've got a real problem with the idea of reading in the toilet. I don't know how everyone feels out there. Like, I don't know how you feel about that. I've seen people I've been to people's houses and they have like stacks of magazines in the toilet, and I'm like, how long are we on the toilet for here, guys? Okay, I know it's a well-worn trope that the old man of the family goes and sits on the john and has a shit for 6 hours or something. I'm like, don't get me wrong, like, as in I spend my appropriate amount of time in the toilet, but like, as in, am I reading a retro gaming book? Am I reading an entire book, like, as in, while I'm on the toilet? I don't think so. And I just thought it was really strange that the author sort of publicised it as that, and I was like, really? I was like, anyway, so that's just a personal thing of mine. And, you don't have to have a take on that.
No, I don't.
No, that's fine. What did I like about this? So I would just say that I do think that it is a good introduction to retro gaming. It's got lovely, simple artwork. This book is, I would say, almost like a conversational piece about how consoles relate to each other. Certainly, like, in terms of the console wars and things of the early 90s, but also how they relate to the gaming industry as well. Just little facts like, how much is the console sold and how much that was relative to each other at the time and things, but not super detailed. The bit that it really sings with is that for each console, it does like the best games you can have for that console. And I'd say each game probably gets like a really nice bit of artwork, and then also probably I'd say a whole. And it's an A5 book, the version I've got, and so you get one A5 page, effectively, maybe 1.5 to each game. And you could do much worse than taking that list of games that he's got in that book and playing them and going, well, they're probably the best games I'll ever play, kind of thing. It's really, really good. It just seems to fit a lot of detail into a very small space.
Yeah.
So yeah, it tells a story. So I really enjoyed that book, and I would recommend it. Like I say, you could get through it in. If you really wanted to shove it, you could probably get through it in a day if you wanted to. It took me about 3 or 4 nights, just sort of, an hour here and there to read through. But and I haven't read any of his other books, but I definitely will be going away to have a look and see what else he's got out there. There was 4 other books, even because that book, I enjoyed it so much.
Nice.
So yeah, and then I read The Nostalgia Nerds Retro Tech by a chap called Peter Leigh. So he's an incredibly popular YouTube sort of retro gaming and tech dude. This was published similar sort of time, 2018. Again, it's an A5 book, and it was hardback, so I picked this up. I think I picked it up for £8 on Amazon, so a couple of pounds more, and that was used. You can get it for about £15 new. It was very similar in its layout. But it hits every single console ever made up to 2001. Like, as in, this one, on the flip side of the Mike Diver one, it really goes into a lot of details about the console and its constituent parts. And the artwork in this has some really amazing sort of photographs of a lot of the consoles kind of and their component parts like laid out. So, if you're really interested in sort of seeing that, you kind of get that pulled apart sort of feeling. Where you're like, oh,
down
it was really cool. So that was good. In this one, and this is kind of like why I wanted to kind of put these together as a pair, really. In this one, it's much more about each system kind of gets a full dressing down, and rather than the games. So you get a lot more detail, and it goes into the nth degree of every single system that's existed up to 2001. Apart from, it doesn't really go into handhelds very much. There's like, they're almost like at the end of the book as a sort of summary sort of situation, which is a bit disappointing, obviously, being predominantly a kind of a handheld sort of podcast, but at the same, on most weeks, but at the same time, it was like, they feel like they should get their due, and they didn't really. But apart from that, this is a lot less conversational, a lot less story. It's just, but it's still super interesting. It's almost like a fact-finding mission about each system. And I found that I learned a lot more in this one about each console that I didn't know about previously. Whereas the other one, I was a bit like, I feel like I'm talking to a friend. This one was a bit more like, I'm at school and I'm learning about these things.
Sit down, shut up.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, and so, that's not to say that it's not fun or anything. It's just a completely different. It felt like a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And after that, I went to watch some of Peter Leigh's sort of videos on YouTube. And to be honest, actually, it's probably a bit more conversational in those videos, but they're really, really good and full of facts as well. So, the one thing I liked more probably about the Mike Diver one was that I think that I've learned that I'm much more of a software guy than a hardware guy. Mm-hmm. And it might be that I think you're a bit more hardware-y than... Well, you are a bit more hardware-y than me. But, I like to know what the killer game is or the killer app. And this only has... literally one A5 page split into 3 for each system, because it would just be too vast to be able to do all the system chat and the game chat, and it's almost, it does like a must see, a must play, and a must avoid game for each system, which is kind of cool, because again, it's a little bit different. It's not just the best games for each system. So if I was going to say who these books were for, really, if you are more for the games and more for being kind of like a starter in the retro gaming world, then I'd say the Mike Diver book. It was probably better. Whereas actually, if you are probably more in that world already and you want to know a bit more about history, then try the Peter Leigh book. And that was just my books that I've read recently. They don't need a score or anything. So this is the thing that you can give a score to.
Right.
We'll stick on retro gaming a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. Antstream Arcade.
Okay.
Heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Got it?
Nope.
No? Okay, cool. Interesting. What do you know of it?
Subscription service where you can play a load of retro stuff, is it not?
It is indeed, yes. So it was a month ago. For a year, it was £17 on Xbox Store. It is currently £16 on PlayStation Store for a year. They kind of seem to go on and off. Where you can play it on mobile phones. You can't cross-platform from the experience on a console to your mobile phone. And I guess on tablets, obviously I've never tried though, but I think it's a different pricing system for phones. I think it's like you pay like £4 monthly, I think, if you use your phone or tablet, whereas if you buy it on console, so I bought it for £17 on Xbox on offer. As far as I'm aware, I think it's £40 for a year, or you can pay £100 for a lifetime subscription. Yeah, it's not cheap. So what do you get for that? As you've already said, it's a cloud streaming retro gaming service. You get, I think it's about 1,300. It advertises 1,300 games. I've seen different things bobbing around on the internet where it says that of this 1,300 games, there's a few iterations of games where it's like 3 or 4 versions of a specific game. So they're probably over advertising what it is. When they first had the service out, I think it was about 18 months ago, they had about 1,400 games on there. So they've lost a couple of games. So I think there was like Earthworm Jim was on there when it first started, and that's not there anymore, which is a big disappointment, to be honest. But so there's a couple of things that I don't think it's as well advertised as it should be, and just be wary that not everything that you think is on there might be on there. But there is a massive I'm going to start and say that I've seen quite a few mixed reviews about this. I've seen some really good reviews, and I've seen some reviews that say, actually, I don't think it's worth this money, and I think they are taking the piss a little bit. I probably come in higher on it than those reviews, definitely. Is it the best instant sliced bread, considering you can pretty much get a retro emulator like wherever you want nowadays? I'd say no, but it's good because it provides a few different things that you wouldn't necessarily get if you just kind of emulated your own or have your own retro gaming systems and things. So when I looked at what the breakdown of all the games was, 95% of the games, I'd say about 1,200 of the games were on these systems: the Amiga, Arcade, Spectrum, and C64. The system is set up so that it actually gives you really clear tiles of what the game is, and it tells you in the bottom right hand corner what system it's for. So that's pretty cool. There are a mix of other different systems on there, so I'd hope that in the future maybe they'll look at adding more things like Genesis games. There's like 7 PlayStation 1 games. One of them is Hogs of War, which is quite good really, because Hogs of War is really selling for a premium for an actual physical copy. So I can play Hogs of War now that I would probably never been able to afford. Well, I could have if I really wanted to, but it's like £60 for a disc of Hogs of War, and I'm not that fussed. Whereas I could play it now, as part of this package for the $17.50 I paid. When you say a number like 1,300 games, does that sound like a lot to you or not too much?
I mean, it does kind of sound like a lot, but as soon as you said the iteration thing, I mean, I know damn well how many versions of Street Fighter 2 were out there, so you can easily see that number falling quite quickly. And also you get into the realms of the sheer number of retro games that have just not been re-released or ported and are effectively lost to time. So it'd be interesting to know how many of them are on Antstream Arcade and how many of those ones on Antstream Arcade are basically ones that are getting licensed to things like Evercade.
Yeah, and I would say that it's so difficult knowing that, if that makes sense. Because so 1,300 games, it is a lot, and you kind of like this. The interface, is a bit messy. It feels like it's been made by a business who really care about preserving retro gaming, but don't quite know how to do that very amazingly. That is in so whilst you can search, it's difficult, I find, to kind of find what you want to search for. That is in, you can just put C64 and bring up all the C64 games, but that's probably as good as a search engine gets, really. It's almost like searching for a console. If you search for Star Wars, so all the Super Star Wars games are on there, which I'm really interested in playing, because obviously you've done. Did you do Jedi, or was it you did Super Star Wars back? You did A-Star, yeah. So, I'm really interested in sort of looking at those. So there is a wider search, but it feels like there could have been a better way of having a browser that kind of put in certain categories, and they've not even bothered to do that, which I'm a bit like, oh, that's kind of annoying. So it's difficult to kind of pick your way through which games are filler, which games are killer, which games are which ones I've played before, which ones are elsewhere, and it would be nice to be sort of say, this is our exclusives, or the only thing that you can get on Antstream Arcade, and they don't do that.
Make a bigger deal out of that, maybe. But
I wonder if they don't, because it's not extensive.
Well, yeah.
Can
you do wish? Can you not wish list? Can you favorite anything or anything like that?
I think you can.
Find it a bit easier,
you can. Yeah. From what I remember, you can. Yeah. So. It was impressive the amount of licensed games they've got on there. I guess as an overall sort of feeling about it, to see how much we spoke about previously, how much it can be a bit of a struggle to sort of have that many games in your house or have an inventory and things like that. To be able to bring it all together under one roof and say, yeah, we're licensed by, or we're approved by, X, Y, and Z console, or developers and stuff. They've done a pretty good job of bringing that library together. So I want them to be commended for that. The controls are mapped for you. That is in, so they do just a nice job of kind of trying to make it as user friendly as possible. You you can just get straight into a game. You can play straight away. You can play a game of Pac-Man, of Space Invaders and stuff that is in. So these older consoles that might have had joysticks and one button, for example, they immediately tell you what those buttons are, mapped to your Xbox controller, and away you go. That isn't it does a really good job. There can be, I noticed on a few games, a little bit of input lag, which is to do with all the cloud streaming that's going on. Yeah. Which, when you think about a game such as, for example, Space Invaders, the timing you've got to have and how clinical that game is, if you kind of even sense a little bit of lag, you're done for. Yeah. So that it didn't ruin it, and it wasn't noticeable every single time I was playing. It wasn't noticeable all the time or anything. I just did notice it at certain junctures where I was like, oh, that definitely lagged there, and now I'm fucking dead. Thanks alien dicks. That is in one of the setups of it as well, which is quite nice that you wouldn't get from just emulating your own games, is that there are daily, weekly, monthly challenges. Okay. So arcade game we spoke about ourselves before when we talked about the Raiden 4 thing that we did and stuff, that isn't that high scoring situation that's there, and that does feed into. So if you feed off that, then it's really fun. And I found straight away that that's what I gravitated towards, and that is almost a good way of finding games that you might not have played before. I mean, the most basic thing was, for example, like Pac-Man, one life. So how far can you get with Pac-Man with one life? And surprisingly, you find that actually I could barely get past the first level. But then you find out, that puts me in the top 400 in the world. So actually, it's not that bad. And you find yourself going for that little, the next bit and getting the next fruit and being better at eating ghosts and stuff. And you start to think that just having that structure there of can you be better than what you were previously makes you play games in a different manner and get better at games, as we've previously discussed, a lot. It really does help. So it's good that they've got that, and that does change regularly as well. So they'll the games are always there, and you can always play them by yourself, whatever you want. But then the challenges change so regularly that actually it's good to kind of go, well, what's the next challenge? Because here's a game I've never played before, and I can't remember for the life of me. I played a shmup that I'd not played before, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is really cool. And I need to tell Rich, and I've forgotten its name.
Good work.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So, yeah, I think that I wouldn't want to pay £100 for a lifetime of this. That is I think that there are options out there that would probably prevent me from doing that. But was I happy that I paid £18 for a year to try it out and probably get a few games under my belt from this? Like Indiana Jones' Greatest Adventures on there, and I've started. I had a little dabble on that because I was like, "Oh, the Great Circle's coming out soon, and I want to play a little bit Indiana Jones," and so I started playing that. That's on there. Monkey Island's on there. There's quite a lot of LucasArts game, basically, which is really cool. So there is a nice variety and mix of old retro games on there. That, again, almost like when I was talking about the Mike Diver sort of book. If you don't have a collection at home, if you don't have an Amiga, if you don't have, I guess, what else is on there? The Spectrum. The new Spectrum's just come out. Sort of, and that's got, I think, how many games have that? Like 80? Nearly 100?
Yeah.
This has got 300 Spectrum games on there. So you do have to sort of think to yourself, how much do I want to own a Spectrum and have the form factor and have the console in my house? If you do, that's great. You might absolutely want that. But actually, I've just paid £18 and I've got 400 Spectrum games there, additional to other things. And I'm a bit like, and actually, it maps the buttons really well for me, dead quick. And it's there on my Xbox. It just feels like it's a good option to have. So yeah, I think that overall, retro gaming purists might be a little bit angry with it. Cost, and also, if you've already got those things in your house and it's not the pure way of doing that retro gaming, then you might not be the happiest about it. For me personally, I think it's great, and it's great to have that option there. I just think it's a little bit expensive, and it's not perfect in how it's laid out as well. I think there could have been better ways of presenting it as a library, but generally I was really impressed. It was better than I thought it was going to be, considering some of the reviews I saw for it. And that's me. There you go. Told you it was Retro Gaming Podcast for your retro gaming needs this week.
Weren't kidding. I am trying to find a list of what's on there.
You are working away. Yeah, it's not that easy.
No. So the
Stood up because my back's hurting, guys. So I'm just flexing.
They Pure Xbox do have a list from November. I think what I was trying to do was track down. There are a couple of like shooters, things like that. That I know haven't necessarily come out on many systems.
Yeah.
So I was having a look because I figured if that's the kind of thing that Antstream are able to pull that haven't been ported yet to like Steam or whatever, then yeah, I could definitely see the value. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here that you can get a bunch of different places, and just scrolling through the list very quickly, like there's a lot of stuff on there that I've never heard of and I don't recognise. And but
well, that's the thing. It's like you don't know how much of that is.
God.
Yeah, shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, so I basically went down the rabbit hole of looking to see what kind of games by Cave are on there, right? So I like games that Cave made.
Yep.
I would like more of them in my life, and I would quite happily pay £18 for a year to be able to play a couple more of them that I am not able to play in other ways.
Yeah.
And it does look like there might be one or two floating around on there that you can't play other places, which is positive. But then there's nothing to say that they're going to stick around.
Yeah, it's so difficult.
It's so what's the word? Ephemeral.
Yeah. That's the word.
Yeah,
that was the word I was looking for. Definitely.
And so I think the idea is good. I think even a couple of years ago, at least in the UK, the internet connections weren't good enough to go in on cloud stuff. I think nowadays it's much more viable. But I think your point about input lag is very important, especially for if you're playing any of these quote unquote seriously.
Yes.
It's going to be difficult. But then I guess the flip side is if you are playing them seriously, you're already looking at can I use a Mister and do the FPGA type emulation type stuff, and or can I go and buy the boards, or you're looking at other options anyway. I guess.
I think it definitely feels like it's almost that the easy way to just have a retro gaming library in your house if you have a passing interest, rather than being like a super serious collector or something. Like everybody that. So there's a chap that I play with on the Discord, the Retro Slash Discord, Gary Gill Gaming, Gary, and he does an Amiga Sunday every Sunday, and he's always showing his Amiga off, and it looks incredible. And he's not going to be interested in this. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be for him.
He's already sorted.
But at the same time, I think that the community would be interested that other people get a chance to play some Amiga games and go, like here's one. It's very easy for me to see what he's doing on a Sunday and kind of go, I'll have a little go at that.
Check that out.
Do you know what I mean? It's just, so it has a use.
Yeah, and I
depending on who you are.
And I guess if nobody goes and uses it, then you'd shut it down, wouldn't you? So it's in everybody's interest to keep these things alive, and see how they do. So. Yeah,
I think the score would be different for you than it would be for me.
I think it might. Yeah, I'm going to say an 8 for you.
Okay.
I think I would probably give it a 7, but then I've not tried it. And there were a couple of things on there that I was even just on that scroll through. I was like, oh shit! Okay, I could actually give that a crack. So I think you're right. There's a point to it. There's a niche it can fill. And it'll be really interesting to see how it fills that sort of longer term. Yeah.
I think if you my advice is get it when it's on offer. So get when it's £18 rather than £40 for the year. That isn't just because obviously it makes economic sense to wait for it to come onto a deal and things. And then also from a point of view that if you do not have any of these collections in your house, that is, like I say, specifically at a lot of arcade, Amiga, C64 Spectrum, then it's definitely worth having it around to sort of see what's in there. But don't expect to be able to find your favourite ever retro gaming game. Like, for example, I searched for Desert Strike. That is in, because I thought, well, I've played that on EA Replay for the podcast, but it was quite hard to play on the PSP, if I'm going to be honest. It's still good, but it was hard. And I was like, I kind of want to play some Desert Strike. And then I couldn't find it on there.
Yeah.
But since I've got the Logitech G Cloud streaming console, which I'm not going to go into detail about now because I want to kind of play a few more games on that and stuff and probably review that in the new year. But I've got a retro gaming emulator on there that basically that's on there and it plays fine on there. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, right, okay, well I can do that elsewhere. So you don't have to be sort of thinking it's not got every single game ever on there. So don't go in thinking that. I don't know. I think a lot of people got pissed off that Earthworm Jim got taken off.
Two things come to mind. You talking about that just then. I mean, one of them is related to this. The other one's completely unrelated. The first thing that comes to mind that is actually relevant to what you're talking about is Antstream Arcade effectively the equivalent of like going to Blockbuster. Like it's almost more like renting.
Yeah,
like in my head, that might be the kind of niche it's filling.
Yes.
Where you're almost trying before you buy in. Like for some of these things.
Yeah, I mean they do have a free version you can get where I can't remember how it works exactly, but there's certainly like 50 games on there, so you can kind of see the interface and see the challenges and stuff for a small portion. So you could, if you really wanted to, go away, try the free version. I didn't do that because I saw it at the deal. I thought I'll just get it, but I mean that is so they even have a precursor to that renting is almost like
I mean that's not even really what I'm getting at. I'm explaining it really poorly because like for me renting was you would go in and sure you might have a bit of an idea of what you might want to play. It might be available, it might not be available, but ultimately you can peruse the shelf and it's going to be a bit of a potluck draw, like, oh hey, that box art looks cool or whatever. I'll give that a crack for a weekend. Okay, that sucked. I'm going to return that and never play it ever again.
Yeah.
Like that kind of ethos, I think in my head is how I personally might be inclined to use something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Does that sound
that makes sense, yeah.
About right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The other thing was going back to my Modern Warfare 2 campaign review, if I may, quickly, for a quick addendum.
I mean, you do know that that's not on Antstream, right? That is in the...
I do. Do you know that it came out in March 2020? So all the stuff that I was saying at the start of the episode about the pandemic possibly impacting development is probably bollocks.
Yeah.
It looks like from the description on the PlayStation Store, it looks as though they possibly thought that Call of Duty Warzone was going to do the multiplayer component bit, and so you would basically get unlocks for Warzone when you bought the campaign.
Right, I see. Again, I just completely got into Warzone and didn't even consider that there was because
things you could unlock.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
it somehow feels even more premeditated that they didn't have the multiplayer component in there.
It got a 3 out of 10. It's fine. It's had its kicking.
Well, I guess my point is, if anything, the 3 out of 10 feels more valid now.
we make valid points sometimes.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I clarified the point about its release date.
Cool. So if you, should we stick with a 7 for Antstream Arcade? Just because I'm comfortable with that even being,
Yeah, I mean, I put it on the spreadsheet as an A. I can move it on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, move it down just because that was what you felt. And to be honest, and the thing is, it's not about what I feel.
I mean, it's your review.
But I think it's just
this is why scoring is stupid.
Yes, it is. We are stupid. So yeah, if you enjoy our podcast. Or you know of someone that has enjoyed our podcast over this last year, you've listened to at least 2 or 3 episodes this year, then please do try and listen to the next episode, because we do try and do our year in review. Really, it's our Spotify Wrapped, but not shit, or at least we would advertise it that way. We hope it's not, So we just kind of have a little look at all our games that we've got in every single score bracket, and we try and give a champion of each score bracket. You know, going back to that scoring is stupid. Even stupider would be even more stupid.
To pick a highlight from each of those brackets. Yeah.
But that's what's fun about it. So, yeah, you know, we might get into a little bit of a tussle. We didn't fight too much last year, but, you know, I mean, Rich was trying to put... At one point, Phoenix Wright almost beat Pokemon Yellow to the best 7 out of 10 game of 2023, so...
I think I stand by that.
Well, it didn't win.
No, it didn't, but I think I stand by that.
So, yeah, we'll see if any good little sort of little tidbits like that come up again. But, yeah, so please keep an ear out for that. It might not be at the exact same time the podcast always drops, just with it being the festive season and things, so we'll let you know through our socials when that's going to drop. But yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy that, and if we don't listen to us beforehand, then happy Christmas and happy New Year. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.